Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. I'm really glad everybody could join us. Today, we're talking about a topic we've never really jumped into before here on the show, which is self-storage and how to make money with self-storage units. I think this is such an amazing topic. And with us is a fellow Hoosier, although he's not from Indiana originally, but he lives there now. And right around the corner from where actually I'm from is Scott Meyers. Now, Scott began his real estate career in 1993 and is known as the nation's leading expert in the self-storage business. Scott has found his way by making many mistakes along the way, learning from those mistakes, and then applying those lessons he's learned at scale to become the authority in the self-storage industry. Scott resides in Fishers, Indiana, and lives spending his free time with his wife, his kids, and giving back to his community. Scott, thanks for coming on the show today, man. I'm glad you could join us.
Hey, my pleasure, Ty. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm really excited about this topic because I've talked to some real estate, experts before on, residential real estate, on apartments, on even mobile home parks. But you're the only guy I know and the top guy in the country that I've seen for self-storage units. So this is such an exciting topic, man. I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing out there.
Oh, man. Well, we love the business. I used to be in the tenant toilet side of the real estate game with apartments and houses. And once we found self-storage, the light bulb went off, and we just went all in on self-storage and sold our apartments and houses and never looked back. And we really like it. It's a pretty good gig.
So let me start there, okay? Because this is fantastic. You started with residential. You started with apartments where a lot of people reside in the real estate industry. But what got you into self-storage? What was it that got you there and you're like, oh, man, this is amazing. I need to liquidate everything else and do only this.
Yeah, so I started out in 1993 buying single-family houses and was looking to just be a landlord, following the Carlton Sheets model, buying, rehabbing, refinancing, and then doubling down on the next and just carrying forward. And so followed that model until we realized that, unfortunately, like Carlton stated in his book in Home Study Systems, we didn't have the free time and the cash flow that was promised. And so we just had a lot of the headaches that went along with it. And, really tough until you get really kind of over the hump and get to scale that model makes sense. And so that's what we did. And we decided I needed to work a little harder, a little bit smarter. And so we bought a whole bunch of apartments and had so we had 400 units in multiple complexes around central Indiana. And with the houses, but all they did was kind of compound the problem. We still, had spending way too much time and had way too many headaches on our hand. We had property management companies in place now because we were at scale. But at the end of the day, I think there was a combination, Ty. One thing was that we were coming out of the recession of 1999, the one previous to the Great Recession, and the administration at the time instituted the Community Reinvestment Act. And so that was the precursor to the 2008 fallout. So the administration at that time felt that anybody who could fog a mirror should own a house in this country. Well, brilliant idea. So, per The Big Short, for those of you who watch the movie, that's what happened. People that had no business buying houses were buying houses, and those were our tenants. They were all leaving our houses, leaving our apartments. And we had a huge budget shortfall. Well, we made it through that. We turned the corner, and it turned our rentals into buy and sell. Buy and rehab and sell. And we did an additional rehab on those houses now to get them to sell. Which we took everything we had. But then when we really peeled back the onion and kind of took a look at the landscape and said, here's the real issue, and that is real estate's good for all the right reasons. Depreciation, leverage. We can borrow money to buy it. But habitational real estate, when you've got tenants and toilets and trash and people who move in, if they decide not to pay, they can stay there until the courts get them out. And then I go to court, the landlords go to court, and we walk out with a little yellow or pink piece of paper with very little ability to get our money back. And in the meantime, oh, by the way, they trashed the place because they were mad that you were evicting them because they didn't pay. And the courts called that excessive wear and tear. So in my book and the way I grew up, what? If you don't pay somebody that's stealing, and if you destroy their property, it's not excessive wear and tear. Their mamas didn't raise them right. So, we decided that one, to be in real estate, just got to get away from the tenants and toilets, and it's either parking lots, parking garages, or storage. And you can't create value in parking lots, but you certainly can in self-storage. Similar to our apartments, you can add on income streams and raise rents, and you can really move the needle. So once I dug in and began to learn about it, I bought my first storage facility, and it was all that. And when they didn't pay, when our clients didn't pay, there's no tenants because they don't live there, but when they didn't pay, we put a lock on their unit per the law, in the lien laws and self-storage. They couldn't get at their stuff until they paid us. And if they didn't pay us after 90 days, then we can sell their stuff off and recoup our money. And our turns at that point, then we blew them out with a blower. There's no drywall, carpet, or anything else. And so that and a number of other reasons, again, the light bulb went off. We said, this is it. We're going in this direction, sold everything else off. And that's all we do now. I own one house. It's the one that I'm standing in right now. And that's it. Everything else is gone. And we own and develop self-storage facilities all across the country now. And we teach people how to do it as well.
That's awesome. And you talked about some of these reasons on why you got into it, but what are some of the other ones that you just mentioned? You said amongst many other reasons. What are some of those many other reasons? You touched on some really good points of why you did it and why it would make sense for other people. But what are some other things that people that are thinking about getting into real estate investing should sway them from maybe investing in these other avenues to investing in self-storage that maybe we haven't hit upon yet?
Yeah. So one that I did touch on is, we do have the ability to create value in these by raising rents across multiple units. We realize that in our houses and apartments, but also other ways to raise revenue. In apartments, you can do it through vending and laundry facilities and perhaps submetering the utilities, although that's not really income. Some ancillary services that you can charge for. But in a self-storage facility, there's over 40 different, businesses within this business that you can add to a facility by, selling locks, boxes, and moving supplies, having a little retail center set up. The traditional, many self-storage facilities that folks are listening may have seen offer truck rentals like U-Haul services or budget. And so that is another income stream. We have different types of rentals in terms of temperature controlled. Yes, that's one type, but specialized for wine storage and furs and art and other collectibles. That's kind of a separate piece that can be added to it as well. We can do propane exchange, propane filling for the boats, or not for the boats, but for the RVs that are parked there as well. But then other services for the boats and the RVs. We can fill their make sure that their tanks are filled. We can add air in their tires and get them ready to go when they come to grab those vehicles. We can have business centers inside for our contractors and other folks that are running, their business out of Starbucks or out of their kitchen table or out of their basement, and they want to have a place to do a little bit of business while they pick up their goods or their trucks and trailers and inventory at a storage facility, and they can rent an office from us for a little while doing that. And so the list goes on and on. Record storage and then shredding services after 7 years, after we've reached that mark with storing those records, that we can then sell them off and charge them by the pound to do. So there's there's just a number of other avenues that we can create income in self-storage by adding those. But some of the other reasons why we like it is the fact that, again, it's not labor intensive because, we don't have to have a manager that's, got their thumb on babysitting the tenants or contractors, because there's not a lot of work to be done. We're metal boxes on concrete slabs and there's nobody living there. So the hours that are required to manage this compared to the number of units, it's a fraction of what it is for houses and apartments, because there just isn't anything to manage. We don't have to write letters for, the tenants fighting and, dogs pooping on the grass and people parking in somebody else's parking spot. I mean, there just isn't, there are all those problems that come with renting out to, the two-legged animals and the four-legged animals that they bring in with them. So it's recession-proof and inflation-proof. When things are good, the economy is good, we buy more stuff in this country, right? Because that's what we do as American consumers, the hyper-consumers of the world. And we don't have a place to store all that stuff. We fill up our garage, we fill up our basement. If we got boats and RVs, the homeowners association say, can't park them here. And you can't put all your stuff in the shed in the backyard because, by the way, we don't allow sheds either. And so there's a huge demand for storage, and it increases during the boom times. When we go into a recession, guess what? People have to move, and they have to move in with each other, and businesses downsize. And so if they're leaving one building or structure, there's stuff inside of it that needs to go into storage. And so self-storage actually benefits more, believe it or not, during a recession than it does during the boom times. So, those are the main reasons, some of the reasons, but those are the main reasons why the shift into self-storage, just because of economic cycles, management, lower lost sunk costs in the business. We're just able to recoup that much easier. And sanity. Can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, there's so many awesome things there. And I just love the ancillary. I like the fact that, like you said, you've got like 40 different avenues of
Hmm.
other ways to make money outside of just the primary. I think that's brilliant. How does somebody get started? That's one of the things you mentioned there
Hmm.
was we help people get into this and succeed.
Yeah.
So if
Mhm.
somebody's thinking about getting started, what have you kind of found are the easiest steps to take to start
Yeah.
the process of jumping in?
Yeah, well, let's start with what it is. The asset class it's commercial real estate, and so therefore it is valued like commercial real estate based upon a net operating income and a cap rate or a capitalization rate. So, like apartments, like mobile home parks. So the good news is, believe it or not, for folks that still don't believe this, when you get into commercial real estate, it's much easier to get financing because the bank is looking more to the strength of the asset. How much cash is this thing throwing off to cover the debt? They're looking more to the strength of that asset than they are to the strength of you, the borrower. Which means, like, in a single family house, if you lose a renter, they assume that your W-2 income or however you gain income will cover the payments on that house. And if they have to take it back, oh well. But they're left with an asset that isn't worth as much as when they give you the loan on it, typically in a single family house. But with a commercial asset, they want to make sure that the income of that facility by the tenants that are in the apartment complex or the pads that are being rented in a mobile home park or the units in a self-storage facility, that those are in place and have been historically, so that it's a low risk for the bank to be able to give money to you, the borrower, on that asset. If they do have to foreclose, you go away and they get the asset back, and they would much rather have a self-storage facility that they can hire a property management company to run until they're able to sell it and get it off their books, than it would be, again, to take back a home or multiple single family homes. So for that reason, yes, they do look at your credit, they do look at your liquidity, but they again, they're looking end game always. It says that, if everything goes to heck in a handbasket and we have to move this owner out, this borrower out, we get that asset, we like that asset. And again, for all those reasons, they do. Self-storage has the lowest loan default rate of all commercial real estate, period. It's hovering below 1%. It's like 0.4%. One of my bankers, I can't say he was giving me a compliment, but after closing one time, he said, "You got to be a brain dead moron to allow one of these things to go into the ground." He said, "It's an easy business." I said, "Well, thank you for that vote of confidence, I think." But in other words, he said, "Give us more. We want this in our portfolio because it's a much easier asset class. They very rarely go back to the bank. They very rarely fail." But the failure rate of apartment complexes, single family homes, mobile home parks is exponentially higher. So for that reason, again, they're looking for the asset class. So it is easier to get these things financed than it is a single family home. So how does somebody get started? Long-winded answer to your question, but first of all, the asset class is strong. Bankers like that. So even if you have no credit, no money, you can find bankers that are interested and equity investors that are willing to come in because it has such a low loan default rate. But looking at an existing facilities is the way, out of the gate. Shouldn't be looking at developments or converting an old Kmart into a self-storage facility. Leave that for a few years down the road when you're experienced. But finding an existing facility from a mom and pop that has an income stream in place that you can take to the bank and say, here's what it's doing right now, and here's what I plan to do to turn it around, raise rates, raise occupancy, add these income streams, use technology to eliminate some of the overhead. That will get you the loan approval. Not guaranteed, but that is much easier than trying to do something on the development side. So that's how you get into the business.
So you think that when it comes to financing these, the best way to go is just right through a regular bank to get a regular commercial loan. And if that's the case, then about what kind of loan to value can you expect?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of can money down is somebody expecting to
Mm-hmm.
come in if they're looking to buy a facility?
Mm-hmm. So yes and no. I'll answer that. And that is the SBA loves self-storage. They've got two loan programs, 504 and the 7A, that self-storage qualifies for. And they won't do this LTV or this program the way it's structured for any other commercial piece of real estate except for self-storage, because they recognize it has a business component to it and the real estate. So, they've stated, they've quoted, and yes, we are getting 90% LTV on some of our facilities, but I'll leave that comment with an asterisk to say that it's very unlikely that you're going to get 90%. It's mostly going to be 85%, maybe 80% with the SBA. So go to an SBA approved lender. They're familiar with this with self-storage, and there is that program out there that we always start with first. But then, the second place is, if there's an existing mortgage on it with a local bank that the seller has, we want to talk to them But again, we have no challenges getting funding on these facilities. The credit unions, the community banks, the savings and loans, the banks that don't package their loans up and sell them off to Wall Street, but that actually portfolio or keep their loans on the balance sheet. They love self-storage, again, because the cash flow is so high and the loan default rate is so low, that this is a safe bet for them to keep on their books, in their portfolio, and to make these loans all day long on self-storage versus some of the other asset classes. So those are the two places to start. And then, we don't spend a lot of time looking, but, then you could perhaps go to the Chases of the world, the Wells Fargo, more the national banks. But, we're 99% either SBA or going to the small community banks, savings and loans, credit unions.
So, Scott, if you're jumping into this and you say, look, all this makes sense, there's a million reasons I would want to do this, then I think one of the next steps that they're going to want to take is somebody's going to want to figure out where to even start looking to buy. What do you do? Are you buying around the area that you live now? Are you buying nationwide in Indiana? I mean, how do you develop that strategy?
That's top secret and none of your business, Ty. Sorry. No, I'm kidding. So, guerrilla marketing, doing the heavy lifting. I mean, we can look online, the usual, places, LoopNet commercial sites, and some of the other self-storage broker sites. That's easy pickings and low-hanging fruit. But the low-hanging fruit isn't there. I mean, we got to create the deals and we got to look under a lot of rocks. So we've made connections with small business brokers where the mom and pop owner, they say, well, time to sell. Do we sell it with a commercial broker or a business broker? Or they don't even sometimes think of a commercial real estate broker because they own a business in their eyes. So we've created relationships with the small business brokers, and we search on their sites as well. But then again, at the end of the day, getting into the trenches and sending out mailers to the owners, making those phone calls and follow up, and going out into the market, pulling on doors, talking to the person behind the counter. Are they the manager? Are they the owner? Can we have access to the owner? Networking, joining your local self-storage association. Some of the local RIAs where folks are located also have a commercial division and arm where people are, working in self-storage or own self-storage facilities and networking with those folks. And then, again, at the more advanced level on the development and conversion side, it's, finding the parcel of ground by doing your market research or that building that can be converted, where you create the opportunity and then create the value on top of it. So, those are the places, sending out the direct mail, contacting owners, brokers in the area, small business brokers. That should be enough to get folks started.
Yeah, so you're hitting it from a few different ways. I mean, one, you're going to the stuff that is actively on for sale, loop.net, any of these places that are selling it. You're also building the network and the connections with the brokers, with the real estate guys to say, look, any self-storage comes for sale. I'm the first guy you come to. So you're putting yourself there. And then you're going to the stuff that's not for sale. You're just, it sounds like, finding facilities in general and then mailing them, just saying, hey, look, if you were interested in selling the facility, keep my info. I'm interested in buying. So it sounds like you're hitting it from all angles to be able to have the best response and chance.
You got it. Yep, that's the idea. Yep.
Now, you're at the next level. So you're not just buying them. Are you converting buildings into self-storage? Are you building these things now from the ground up? Because that's what I see where I am. I mean, everything's exploding in growth down here in Florida. Literally 2 miles from me, they just built a massive self-storage facility with like 3 stories of inside units. It's crazy. So I'm just saying that we're seeing a lot of the new ones being built. What are you doing? Are you doing all of them? Are you looking to convert? Are you looking to build? Are you looking to buy? Where are you at this stage in your game?
Yeah, so the business model from day one is it's always easier, and we can have a lot more volume and get into the business quicker by buying existing facilities that we can add value into. So finding the mom and pops, as I mentioned, usually on 4 to 5 acres, and they've only built out 3 or 4 for whatever reason. They just ran out of gas, time, or desire to build it out. So we buy those based upon the net operating income, so the income minus the expenses. And if we do that on the existing buildings, then we get the rest of that land for free. And then we lease them up, raise rates, put more buildings on that. So that's kind of the best of both worlds. We kind of get to put our developer's hat on, in a year or two in the future. But the best way to create value in any business, especially in real estate, is to start without an income stream, like on a piece of dirt or a vacant building. Put an income stream on it. That's where you make the big money. So always looking for existing. Next is conversions, because we can buy these distressed buildings that the apartment guys, the condo guys and gals have overlooked, retail folks have overlooked, and said, no way, we'll pass. Price goes down. Well, as long as the market will support it, doing our homework. we'll buy those at pennies on the dollar, and then we build out the inside with the walls and doors of storage, which is much less expensive and quicker to market. Zoning's in place already, certainly much easier to do as well. So from that standpoint, conversions are next, and then developing from the ground up. So buying parcels of land in areas where it makes sense, and then building and going up. So yes, we're building like that building that went in. I don't know what you consider massive, but we're building some 100,000 square foot multi-story self-storage facilities all around the country. Also doing conversions. I prefer those, so we're kind of seeking out more of those opportunities as well. And then again, still buying existing facilities that we can add value to by adding additional units as well.
So if you're buying existing, and it sounds like you're buying nationwide, what do you do? Do you actually physically go see the actual location before you end up making a purchase?
Let me see. Do as I say, not as I do. I don't typically write a purchase agreement without going and visiting it. There are some instances where we've got an army of folks around the country, that are looking at deals that we partner with, and some that are brokers and other folks that can either identify and they refer deals to us, or that we can, if I know of one in a market that comes available, I can usually, find somebody close enough and either pay them, or as a favor, have them go over and determine if this is something that we're interested in putting an offer on. So from that standpoint, we may tie something up and then I'll get down there, but before we buy it. But I've never bought anything sight unseen. In other words, go to closing, here in Indianapolis without having visited a site. So although you could, and I know there's some people that do it, and again, there's, we're talking about if it's land, not a big deal. If it's a building, we kind of, see and know what we're going to get, and a facility, kind of the same thing. But at the end of the day, that's not good practice to just go buy something unseen.
You're helping students get into this. So when they come in, what are some of the misconceptions that people have of this process and in this industry at all that you could maybe crush right now before they're even thinking about getting in? I mean, what are some things that people are like, oh, I didn't know that, or surprises that they get?
Well, probably because of all the answers I've given right now and the questions you've asked and the people's perception and introduction is I give really easy answers to, right? Makes it sound easy and glowing and everything's rosy. And I'll tell you, it is on this side compared to where I was in other aspects of real estate. But at the end of the day, it's a business. This isn't a hobby, and it's not passive, and it's not a set it and forget it. So I think the biggest misconception that people have these days, Ty, is that there's hard work involved in it. Oh, go figure. What a surprise. You have to do your due diligence ahead of time. You have to be prepared and get a team in place, and think ahead as to how this is going to be managed. Who's going to do the due diligence, putting together, building your team, and, what it's going to look like running it afterwards, accounting for cash reserves if you're developing or converting, things of that nature. So I think more than anything that where I've seen people maybe miss a step or stumble, can't say that I witnessed too many failures, flat out failures, but mostly it's that people didn't take the time to educate themselves and understand the underwriting process and or then what it looks like in terms of a budget to run these things afterwards, the time involved and what the cost is. So, like any investment, and this is an investment, it's a business. It could be somewhat passive if you're going to have a third-party property management company run it as well, but you wouldn't buy any mutual fund without doing some research and homework and understanding how to value that company or that industry or that sector. You're not going to buy, an investment vehicle, a classic car, unless you've looked into that car and understand what the market looks like for it, and whether you're getting a good deal on it and doing your due diligence. So that's probably the biggest piece, Ty, is that people just don't do their due diligence, and they don't know, from Adam, how to underwrite a facility. They'll either accept the seller's numbers or a broker's numbers and say, well, we're the big brokerage firm, so that income and those expenses must be verified from the seller, and I think what I see the bottom line here is what I'm going to get when I own it. And in many cases, they are unpleasantly surprised by that fact. So that's, I guess, from a misconception, I think it's just not being prepared and not taking it serious is probably the best way to answer that.
So, Scott, when you're looking at these things, what do you consider to be a good investment? Are you looking at what the value is versus what they're selling it for? Are you looking for positive cash flow? I mean, there's got to be, what are the factors that you look at and you're like, that's a good deal?
Yeah, well, for starters, and I think for anybody starting in the business that's looking at these, it's got a cash flow, and it's got to have make the debt service coverage ratio ratios that the banks are looking for. So they're in that 1.25 to 1.3. So if the deal the price that they're asking and the net operating income that's coming out of this thing, if it doesn't meet the bank's requirements, nobody's going to get into the business anyways. So, that's, if you're looking, again, existing facilities, all things being equal, maybe 70, 75% occupied, that's one thing to look at. Yes, I'm looking at the value when I underwrite it versus what I'm paying for it. But that's also a little bit of a misnomer, because really what I'm looking at is where I can take it. If I'm buying it for $1 million, but in a year from now, I know that I'm going to be able to increase rent, increase occupancy, add income streams, maybe add a few more buildings, and now it's going to be worth $2 million, or 1.7 or 1.8. I'm more concerned about that, and we have the ability to pay cash or get a low LTV loan and bring in some equity, to shoulder that burden, that lease up phase while we create value in it, to be able to get to that. So I'm looking more for, the multiple, the equity multiple. Can I sell it for 2x or 3x what I'm paying for it? I'm more concerned about that than I am about cash flow out of the gate, because my cash flow needs are met with my existing facilities.
So are you flipping them? I mean, what's your strategy? Do you have some that you flip and some that you retain? Do you retain them for a certain period of time? Like, what's a good strategy of when you start accumulating these, of what you're trying to do? Because, in residential real estate, that's what happens, right? Some people flip a portion, then they retain them. So what's your strategy there?
Yeah, we're looking to do the same thing. Initially starting out, it was planning to move over into this asset class, following the Carlton Sheets model, but just not without tenants and toilets, and just amassing a whole bunch of these. But then, you realize as you get smarter, at least for myself, we got a little smarter about money in general, and that if you increase value in a piece of real estate, pretty quickly, then your own internal rate of return, and if you're bringing in private equity investors, their internal rate of return, it goes down once it's stabilized and just kind of humming along with little upticks in income. And so there's a time value to money. So I found that we're going to increase value in these facilities as quickly as possible, get to that place where they're 85% occupied, rents at the top of the market. We've added the income streams that we can, and so whether that takes us a year, 2 or 3 years, it's at that point that we're looking to listen and sell that off, and then take those proceeds and roll it into the next one, because we know how to do that. We know how to create value and create that wealth. And so we can literally 10x our wealth that way, versus tying up all our capital in down payments. And even if you refinance, you've still got equity into a property tied up that you could be using elsewhere. So my philosophy is I know how to create that value, so I'm going to try to get as much of my equity, my cash, my liquid capital, that I can go out and do more of these and create that value again. So that's one way. We've got, and that's typically like a 3 to 5 year hold. So to answer your question, in our conversions development, they're on the 5-year end, 6-year end. Some of these conversions are less, and then value add deals are usually 2 to 3 years to get them to that maximum value. But there's some of these projects that the big guys, what we call the REITs, the real estate investment trusts, public storage, extra space, life storage, you store it. The big guys, they're looking to buy projects, whether it's a conversion or a development, at certificate of occupancy, meaning once we're ready to open the doors, these folks have cash to deploy because they're public companies, and they will buy them from us before we rent one unit. And instead of putting our sign on it, they'll say, "Oh, hold on a second, we're going to put our sign on it," and they'll buy it from us at that point. And they're paying crazy multiples as if the thing had already been either leased up or darn close to being leased up. So those are good paydays, and we will take that cash. And it's not the same. It's shy of what we would get in terms of riding it out for 5 to 6 years. But if we can get 75, 80, 90% of what that value is today and not have to wait another 3 or 4 years to do it, then we'll do that as well. So all the above. And we got an army of people looking at opportunities for us. And if it doesn't meet our model, then we also have a huge community in which we can peddle that off and wholesale those off for an assignment fee or a referral fee.
And I think that's brilliant. So it really is, you're hitting it again from all different angles to give yourself the best option. You mentioned a handful of times raising rent. So how does that look? Because if you're coming in and buying existing facility and your goal is a 2-year, 3-year turn to be able to make the improvements, raise the rent, fill the occupancy rate, you don't want to radically raise the rent, I would think, too quickly. So how does that work? What's your strategy for raising rent?
Yeah. So not radically, but we'll push the limits. Leases in self-storage are 30 days. So, we come in and we don't upset the apple cart immediately when we come in, but we send out a couple letters. One, when we first close, it says, "Hey, we're under new ownership. Here's the new name change if we do one," which typically we do. "Here's where to send the rent. Come on in, say hello to your new manager, and you're going to like what you see. Here's some of the improvements that we have planned over the next 30, 60, 90 days, whatever that is. So, nothing in that one to let them think that anything is gonna change. And again, it's not like apartments where they start getting nervous and people move just because out of fear. I, I couldn't understand that, but they do. So, we're doing nothing but improve. Then 30 days later, the next letter comes out, also starts with good news. It says, hey, hopefully you've liked the things that we've done at the facility. We've done this, this, and this, and again, reminders, and your rent here. And oh, by the way, we've done an audit of the rent roll, and we found that there are some folks that are paying rates from 2010, and it's now 2019. And so here's, we're not going to bring you up to full market. We're charging somebody coming in the door, but you understand that expenses have increased since then, property taxes and what have you. And so, not to create an unfair burden, we're going to meet you in the middle, and we're going to raise you from here to here. And in some cases, Ty, that's $10 a unit. It could be $20 a unit. It could be $30 a unit. But if you're buying a 400 unit facility and you multiply that by $10, $20, $30 in 30 days or so, then all of a sudden, you see, with the power of the cap rate and the multiples of commercial real estate, then we can start to create some serious value in that facility just by raising rates and getting them up to market. And then again, we have the ability, because it's every 30 days and it's based upon demand. We can raise rates whenever we want. Demand-sensitive pricing is really big in our industry right now. And it's we basically borrowed a page from the airlines. You book a ticket today to go fly tomorrow. It's going to be $1,000 almost, no matter where you go in the country. If you booked it 2 months ago, could be $157 on Southwest's want to get away rate. Same thing when somebody's standing in line and rents a 10 by 10 and it's $89. The next person in line is going to pay $94. That person's like, what? You just gave it to him for $89. Oh, we got one less now, and do you want it? Or the person behind you is going to, get yours, and then you're going to be $98 when you get back in line. So that's again another one of the beauties of self-storage, and one of the benefits of this industry is that we've got that flexibility. Some of the big guys, they have a policy of 7% every 7 months, and that's just like clockwork. They just raise it no matter where somebody comes in.
Wow, that's crazy. But I guess if you're only leasing them for 30 days, it makes sense. Yeah. But then that brings into the next question, which is, what are you doing then to attract new customers coming in the door? What's the strategy there? And then what do you do to then keep that customer acquisition cost low? Because you're not making a lot in the beginning, so you've got to keep your customer acquisition cost low.
Yeah. So also what I like about with self-storage is that when you have a facility, it's like a store. So we're marketing it all the time. We're trying to dominate a 3-mile radius, meaning that we want all searches for self-storage in this 3-mile radius to come to our website, and then to our call center, to our office. So that marketing is in place all the time. We don't shut it off. It's not like we're running an ad because we got a vacancy. That marketing is in place all the time. So from a budget standpoint, that's good. So we're always doing our best to stay, just below, again, the big guys have a bigger budget. So the public storage U-Haul and, those folks that are in that box when looking online, we want to be right below that with our own website. Or we also use some of the aggregators, which is kind of like the price line of self-storage. So Sparefoot, US Storage Search, where people log into that and then they choose their location based upon where they live, points them to our site. So online marketing is big in our space, SEO space, and then having a website that is also responsive, meaning whatever device they're on, whether they're on a laptop, they're on a desktop, an iPad, and a mobile phone, it works. The website works. You don't have to mess around with it. And they can rent a unit online or at the very least reserve a unit online and then come in and finish on the rest afterwards. So it's all about accessibility, checking it off the list, making it easy. It isn't like residential real estate where, mom wants to go check out the neighborhood and the school systems. These people are, mom's usually stuck with making this decision too, and she wants to check it off her list. Is it close to home? Does it look safe and secure? Can I rent a unit online right now because I got something else to do and pick up the kids and take them here and there? Done. That's how we get folks in. Now to keep them there, well, the facility has to look like it did on the website. It has to be safe and secure, well lit, in a decent location, clean units, security. We have to show that we have security with cameras and fencing and gate codes to get in. And having some amenities also attracts people, whether they or not. If you have a retail area there and you offer truck rental and shredding services and temperature control, whether they need it or not, kind of like our apartments, everybody wants a pool. Nobody ever uses it, but we have all those things at our facility that also attracts people. And that's, as long as you don't raise rates too much, they're not going anywhere. If we raise their rates $5, $7, they're still not, they're not going to spend a day cleaning their stuff out and get the moving truck to go move down the road to save $4. Just treat them right and don't raise the rates too much, and they'll stay until they're done.
Yeah. A lot has to do with the improvements that you're making. And that's interesting
Mm-hmm.
because you're talking about making sure the website is something you can reserve. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of changes all the way through, from marketing to website to the facility that you're making in that first 90 days to justify the price increase and to
Mm-hmm.
increase the value of the asset to be able to flip it.
Yeah.
What about the managing position? We've talked about that a little bit as well. How do you go about hiring the right manager for that kind of facility? And does the manager stay on site? Because I see some locations where manager is then living on site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many of our facilities, again, we own facilities in your backyard, and so from Indiana, there's no way that I can hire somebody, train them, keep an eye on them. So we hire third-party property management companies who handle that. So we vet them, and we interview them, and there's about 3 of them that we use that are regional operators that will handle that for us. So they do, all the marketing, they do the advertising locally, they do the bookkeeping, they train the folks, they hire the folks, they improve secret shop the site, on their own to check their own folks and give me the reports on that, and then give me the reports monthly for everything, the financials of what's going on and pictures, and letting me know if there's any repairs that need to be done, which again are pretty minimal. So, from that standpoint, we don't worry too much that something isn't in our backyard, because there's really no sense of urgency in storage. They're metal boxes on concrete slabs with people's junk, treasures inside of them. That's it. So got to mind the store, and doing the things that we just mentioned is just good business. So that's
Sure.
what's involved in it. So we find a management company that shares our philosophy and does that. So where do they find the good people? They interview, and they go through rigorous processes on personality checks to make sure that we get the right person in there. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's a management company, but the person behind the counter, we want to make sure that they're incentivized and they're fighting for every rental, for every person that comes through the door, and answering the phones and doing everything they can, because this kind of is a commodity, and they'll go down the road, to get a choice, or because somebody else answered the phone. So we just got to stay on top of it and make sure that we're making, the right decisions and getting the right people in place. So I think
Awesome.
it seems like there's another question inside of that.
No, I think that actually answered my question, because whether they stay on site or not, that probably isn't
Yeah,
practical.
staying on site. So that's it. So I'm not a big fan of that. We don't build facilities with an apartment, because again, I'm really opposed to tenants and trash. And if I have somebody living there on site, first of all, you want a rock star running your facility, right? If you hire somebody and they are a rock star, is a rock star really willing to live at a self-storage facility? You kind of have
Right.
to ask that question.
Right. Yeah.
If they turn out to not be a rock star and you have to fire them, free up their future to pursue other career opportunities, then you also have an eviction on your hands, and they can do a lot of damage to that apartment, your site, and your business while they're
Right.
there, in
Sure.
that location. So, for those reasons, I don't. Again, the big guys, some of them swear by it. They would never have a facility managed by somebody that wasn't living on site, and they would even hire their own mom and pop, somebody to do some of the maintenance, and then mom to do the office and handle everything else. So, 2 ways of looking at it. I'm just not a big fan of the on-site, living on-site manager.
Scott, as we get ready to wrap up, you are really big on teaching people how to do this. So just dive in and tell us a little bit about how it works to work with you guys to learn
Mhm.
this from the ground up, and kind of how that looks and what you
Mhm.
guys are teaching people.
Yeah. So we started this by I used to run the Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association, which I'm sure you're familiar with here in Indianapolis. Was one of the largest groups in the country, and started doing some workshops teaching people about storage. And then one of the agents for the national speakers, called me one day, and I talked to him about booking speakers for our group, and he said, "Hey, I understand you're in storage. Why don't you let me help you write a home study system, and I'll put you on the road and have you go speak." And I said, "Well, that sounds like fun, because I see the checks that we write those folks." So, um, long story short, and I'd been thinking about this. I'd had a chance meeting with Dave Ramsey, who basically told me to go out and start an education business to keep people from going broke like he and I did. And so timing was right. We launched that, and then people started asking for a 3-day live event to learn how to implement it. So we started our self-storage academy and held some of those per year. And then people wanted mentoring and coaching, which I really didn't have time for and didn't want to do. And so we reluctantly did that for a number of years. And then that was successful, hired some great people in place to allow our people to be successful. But then that whole education business, you know how that goes. I mean, that's another 60-hour-a-week business in addition to my 60-hour-a-week investing business. So we drew a line in the sand and said, well, we're only going to teach and work with folks now, unless, except if there's a partnering component to it. So we still have mentoring programs in place that are group or done by folks that are other than myself one-on-one, except at some of the higher levels in which we do mentoring and coaching by myself, but we're going together and we're going to partner on the facility that we buy or develop together. And then also ultimately I have a mastermind, which is folks that are successful in the business that we meet with once a quarter for a couple of days. And we trade deals and we share equity partners to get deals done. So that's maybe too long of a winded answer to your question, but again, that's kind of where we're at and how we teach people. So something for all, beginner, intermediate, advanced at all levels, resources. But the difference, as you mentioned, is that we're different than anybody else in the country in the fact that we partner with our folks and we bring private equity as well. So that's what we bring to the table and to the marketplace to do our best to achieve total self-storage world domination. That's the goal, Ty.
Scott, anything I missed, anything I should ask, or any parting thoughts as we get ready to wrap up?
Coming back to Indy for the 500 in May?
I don't know, man. I don't make it up there as much as I should. In all fairness,
next time you do, we put on a big party out there, and the only question you need to ask is if you're coming back, if you can get an invitation, I'll see if I can get you into our party.
That sounds good because we can't watch it from my parents' house.
Right. Yeah, no, you can't.
You can't even watch the race. So I'm like, no, I think I'm going to stay here where I can actually watch the race. Yeah. But I'd love to get my kids up there because they love IndyCar and the St. Pete Grand Prix down here, which starts season. So we go to that all the time. Yeah. So I'd love to take them up there one day to see that, see what that's like.
Bring them on up. But on the storage side, that's about as much as I can cover in the time that we have. So hopefully that was helpful.
Where can everybody go to learn more?
Selfstorageinvesting.com is the place. Got lots of free resources, got some free videos to pull down, and enough to get your appetite wet to see if this is something you want to dive into.
It's awesome. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Ty. Thanks.
And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Listen, this is a really, really, really interesting opportunity. Living in Florida, I can tell you that real estate's hot, but it's so hot that people are pouring into that space. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in being in real estate, you really want to find a niche like Scott has talked about that everybody's not in, that's not hyper competitive, where you can still get really good returns without dealing with all that nightmare headaches that so many people deal with when they're dealing with toilets and trash and everything that Scott mentioned today. So this sounds like a really, really, really interesting way to jump in and make a lot of money in real estate and to be able to do a lot of cool things, whether you're flipping properties, holding properties, whatever it may be. But I can tell you, we only scratch the surface of what there is to learn. So make sure you visit selfstorageinvesting.com. That's selfstorageinvesting.com. I'm going to leave that link on the show resources page. This means nothing unless you take action. And the action to take is to go to selfstorageinvesting.com, see all the resources, all the training, all the information that's there for you, and maybe take the baby step in. As Scott mentioned, they have a lot of different ways from very beginner to somebody that's really looking to do this at an advanced level to get in, whether it be the mastermind, whether it be the mentoring, whether it be their boot camp, or the many other ways that they can help get you into this. But it all starts by going to selfstorageinvesting.com. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget to visit selfstorageinvesting.com, and I look forward to seeing you on our next show. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.